What happens when a former TV news anchor joins the other side and starts a campaign to tell the truth? Well, the left freaks out and does everything it can to shut him up. They swatted him. They condemned him on social media. They did everything they could to silence him. It didn't work.
Your show's a big hit. It's a big success. You do fantastically. Your ratings are great, and we're very proud of you.
This is Unshaken and Unafraid with Joe Pags.
He's a man so many of us respect. He ran one heck of a presidential campaign. I thought he was a great candidate. For a while, I was saying, let's vote for Dr. Ben Carson. He's back on the program today, of course, world-renowned neurosurgeon as well, and good friend of ours. Ben, how are you? Good to see you again.
Doing very well, Joe. Glad to be on your new podcast.
Well, I appreciate you doing it. You know, I know how busy you are, but you've always been very, very gracious and very, very giving of your time. And I wanted to make sure we got you as soon as we possibly could off the beginning of it, because I think, Ben, you and I come from the same place. We just want to tell the truth. We want to have traditional American values. Western civilization is good. Judeo-Christian values aren't bad. And if you have that sort of, outlook, for some reason in this country, there was a progressive movement for about 100 years trying to shut us up. So having you on this program actually, I think, adds a little gravitas. So I can't tell you what a privilege it is to have you back.
Well, thank you. I was on Capitol Hill today doing a congressional testimony and listening to some of the people on the left saying, we can't cut any of these programs. There's no waste, fraud, or abuse. People will starve to death. People will die. And of course, obviously, if we don't get our fiscal house in order, we're all going to die. We're all going to be in dire shape.
Exactly right. Well, we are. Well, see, here's the problem. They will lie, and Ben, they lie with such ease. You've been dealing with these people for a long time. I've been doing this kind of a job for about 35, 36 years, and you run into people that can look you right in the face and lie to you and act like, I'll give you a couple of examples. Trump is trying to stop married women from voting. How stupid is that? This Abrego Garcia guy is not MS-13, although two judges both said that he was. We have to believe that for some reason Trump is now deporting U.S. citizens. All of that is a lie. He's going after Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid. He's not doing any of that stuff. So, Ben, how do you deal with that? I know what I do. I just get loud in Italian. But, I mean, how do you deal with that when somebody looks you right in the face and you know they're lying to you?
I look them back in the face and say, Obama was the deporter in chief. Yes. There were no questions about him deporting these people. Same thing happened with Clinton. He deported a lot of people. No questions asked. So all of a sudden, due process. Very interesting.
Right. Well, the due process is, I'd like to have asylum, and the judge says, yes, you can, or no, you can't. And over 90% are told, no, you can't. This guy was adjudicated, no asylum. He got a final deportation order. Then there was this stupid withholding removal to El Salvador, which has already been dealt with, in my opinion, because MS-13 is now a terrorist organization, the organization that he worked with. So, again, they'll lie with such ease. But I want to dial back the clock, if you don't mind. Let's go back to 1951, Detroit, Michigan. There you are. How do you go from being a kid in Detroit, Michigan, in not the best neighborhood? You told me that you were a feisty kid, got into some trouble. How do you go from that to in 1987 you're separating conjoined twins who are tied together by their head? I mean, that's a lot of ground to cover in 30 some odd years from your birth to where you got. But I don't think you were born and then at 5 years old said, I'd really like to operate on brains. So how do we get there?
Well, I think really the key was my mother, who refused to be a victim, and she made us read. And I didn't like the ideal in the first place. I thought I should be watching TV and playing like everybody else. But no, she said, you got to read these books and you got to give me a written book report. And we didn't know she couldn't read them. But I hated it at first. I hated it. But as I started reading about scientists and surgeons and explorers and entrepreneurs, and their life stories, it began to dawn on me that the person who has the most to do with what happens to you in life is you. It's not some circumstance. It's not some person. And, I used to hate poverty. Some people hate rats and roaches. And I hated poverty. I couldn't stand it. Except when I started reading those books, then it didn't bother me so much because I knew it was only temporary. I knew that it was in my power to actually change that. It was be the choices that I made and the effort that I put into it. So I knew I was coming out of it, so it didn't bother me nearly as much. And, it was an arduous journey along the way. There's no question about it. I spent many nights studying, learning everything I could. I got to medical school. I thought I had finally conquered the last hurdle, but it wasn't true because I did poorly on the first set of comprehensive exams, and my counselor looked at my record. He said, "You seem like a very intelligent young man. I bet there are a lot of things you could do outside of medicine." He tried to convince me to drop out of medical school. He said, "You're not cut out to be a doctor.
Wow.
And you're going to torment yourself and everybody else. We can help you get into another discipline." I was devastated. My dreams going down the drain. I went back to my apartment and I just prayed to God to give me wisdom. And I started thinking, what kind of courses have you always excelled in? And I realized I excelled in courses where I did a lot of reading. And what kind of courses have you always struggled in? And I realized I struggled in courses where I listened to a lot of boring lectures because I don't get anything out of them. I get nothing out of them whatsoever. And I was sitting 6 hours worth every day. So basically wasting 6 hours a day. So I made the executive decision to skip the boring lectures and to spend that time reading. The rest of medical school was a snap after that. And
I got to ask you this, though. What an incredible journey. You could have listened to them and not been what you became. But when they said that, like, I'll give you an example. My father was the most important, most powerful, overbearing man that I ever had in my life. Lost him 15 years ago. Loved him to death. I wish he were still here today. But he always gave me that same sort of speech, like, find something else you can do. And then at that point, Ben, it was, I'm going to prove you wrong. And then when I was on TV, it was like, holy crap, my son's on TV. Then when I was on radio, holy crap, my son's on radio. So I lived my life to show him he was wrong about that and to impress him at the same time. When the doctor said that, or when the professor said that to you, did you say, watch me? Or did you say, I should be able to do it? Because it sounds like it's a little of both. I should be able to do it. Why am I not getting this done? And then you devised the plan to not take the lectures. But was it a challenge? Because I think a lot of people would have said, you're right, let me go be a mechanic. Not that there's anything wrong with being a mechanic, but you decided that you were going to do what you ended up doing. So what did you get out of them saying that? Did it motivate you to prove them wrong?
I really didn't care what he said, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I just knew I was concerned about what God wanted for me, and I was convinced that he wanted me to be a doctor. And got better revenge than that, because many years later, when I was back at my medical school as the commencement speaker, I was looking for that counselor because I was going to tell him he wasn't cut out to be a counselor.
I love it. What did they say? Oh, we always knew you had it, Ben.
Well, of course, everybody says things like that. But
what's interesting, as you're on the way up, everybody starts taking credit, even those who were saying nay, right?
You wouldn't believe the credit that people take.
It is Dr. Ben Carson, Common Sense with drbencarson.com. Common Sense with drbencarson.com. Go follow him right now is it at Real or is it just at? No, it's at Real Ben Carson. Go and follow him on X as well. So you get into medical school. Now, we skipped a little bit. We don't have time to do the entire chronology, of course. But at what point from childhood into adolescence into adulthood did you always know that you wanted to care for people in the community? Were you like, I want to go back and be a great doctor in Detroit? Did you just want to heal people at large? What was the trigger for that?
I was enthralled by mission stories about missionary doctors.
Okay.
And how they traveled all over the world to bring not only physical but mental and spiritual healing to people, sometimes going into very dangerous areas. And that just grabbed me. And I decided when I was 8 years old I was going to be a missionary doctor. Now, things changed. By the time I was 13, I decided I'd rather be rich. So at that point, missionary doctor was out and psychiatrist was in.
Ah, gotcha. We all decide to be rich at 13, don't we?
Exactly. But, I was a psych major in college, had professors like Unafraid, Sigmund Freud's daughter. I was really into analysis. But when I got to medical school and I started listening to the neurosurgeons and the things that they could do, it just blew me away. And I started migrating in that direction. And people were saying, no, you don't want to do that. That's the wrong field for you. At that time, there had been 8 black neurosurgeons in the world. But, the good Lord does not dispense talent based on race. And I took to nurse like a duck does to water. And it's one of the reasons that I talk to young people all the time about finding out who you are, what your talents are, and following your talents. I was particularly talented in that area. I had what it takes to be a good neurosurgeon.
But what's interesting is when people talk to me about, I'll get emails from people saying, my mom says I'd be a great talk show host. How do I do it? Then I tell them, go pour coffee somewhere and pay your dues and then see if you actually have the talent for it. Something you just said resonates with me in my years in this business. We all have some talent. We all have something that we do well. The challenge is identifying it. So you identified it. Instead of working the mental aspect of the brain, you wanted to work in the physical aspect of the brain. When does that epiphany happen? Was it when you saw what doctors were able to achieve, like you just said? Because we're talking about cracking open people's skulls, Ben, and going in there and fixing what's wrong. I mean, that's an unbelievable thing to even strive to be. And you ended up being one of the best, if not the best on the planet. So when does that switch go off where you said, I know my hands are capable of doing it. I know my mind is settled enough to do it. I think I can operate on people's brains, because there's a lot that goes into that.
Well, another interesting aspect of it is I don't like the sight of blood.
Stop it. So you're cracking people's heads open. You don't like the sight of blood? What?
Would you rather have a surgeon who likes the sight of blood?
Well, no, I guess not. I don't. I think the less blood during the surgery would be better, I would think. So go on. I mean, that's amazing.
So, I tried to do relatively bloodless surgery, but it was as a medical student that it came to my level of consciousness that this is what I wanted to do. This is what I was talented in. When I took the rotations, I did extraordinarily well. The chief of neurosurgery told me while I was still a third-year medical student that they would take me in their neurosurgery training program.
Wow.
That I didn't need to worry about that. So,
is it the things that I talked about, though, Ben? Is it because you could teach me the ins and outs of the brain and what connects to what and how do you have to fix that and how do you separate the other? But I physically could not do it. I don't think that I've got the acumen. I don't think I have the dexterity to do it. How did you know you had all the tools?
Well, I knew because in college, I became an extremely good table soccer player, foosball. Okay. That requires a lot of coordination.
We have to play sometime because I think you'd beat me very easily, but we have to play. Go ahead.
And also, as a summer job, I was a crane operator in a steel factory. They never let summer employees do that because you have to have very good eye-hand coordination. You're driving these tons and tons of steel through narrow channels, loading them on the back of trucks. And the fact that they saw that I was capable of doing that within a few days, they turned it over to me.
That's cool.
Those kinds of things made me know that I had something that was extraordinary.
Did you always stay close to home? Did you stay in the Michigan, the Midwest area? Did you stay in Detroit? Where did you go to school?
I went to college at Yale.
Okay.
Because, I only had enough money to apply to one college. And my favorite TV program was GE College Bowl. You might be too young to remember that.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it came on every Sunday, and they had two colleges pitted against each other and asked all kind of questions, science, math, history, geography. I was really good at everything. But they also asked about classical music and classical art. I didn't know anything about that. I wasn't going to learn it at an inner city high school. So I took it upon myself to learn classical music and classical art. I would go down to the Detroit Institute of Arts, roam through those galleries day after day, week after week, month after month, until I knew every picture, who painted them, when they were born, what period it represented. Wow. Always listening to my portable radio, Bach, Telemann, Mozart. Kids thought I was nuts. A black kid in Motown listening to Mozart. I tried to get Mo and Motown was Mozart, but nobody believed me. But I said, I'm gonna apply to the college that wins the grand championship in college ball. And that year, the grand championship was between Harvard and Yale.
Nice.
And Yale polished Harvard. So I said, I'm not going to school with all those dummies. And fortunately, they accepted me with a scholarship.
Oh, I love it. It's Dr. Ben Carson. We're going through a bit of history now. I just love it. I really do. And it's funny because I did a documentary on Motown's 40th anniversary. I ended up winning an AP award for best documentary or something. I've been in that neighborhood. I've been in that area. I never once heard it referred to as Mozart. It was the Mo in Motown. I love it. It's Dr. Ben Carson. Do you end up going back home? You go to Yale. You become this incredible doctor. You're going to end up being a neurosurgeon eventually because you said you had to do your rounds and stuff before that. Does all that happen close to home, or were you gone from home now? Were you were out and you're just going to be a worldly Ben Carson, not somebody who's still home based in Detroit?
Well, I wasn't far from Detroit. When I finished Yale, I went to the University of Michigan for medical school.
Nice, right there, yeah, in Ann Arbor.
That was perfect. And then from there to Johns Hopkins, where I spent my entire medical career from internship to the day I retired. So I was there, but did a lot of traveling in the process. After my first 15 minutes of fame, which was for hemispherectomies, an operation where you take out half the brain to cure intractable seizures and certain children who are good candidates for that. That was my first 15 minutes of fame. And then my second 15 minutes of fame came the year after that when I did intrauterine surgery on a hydrocephalic twin. And, I got a lot of attention for both of those things, but, it's a little fleeting fame and it goes away. And I remember saying to my wife...
Hey Ben, I got to stop you first. It hasn't gone away, but go ahead. It hasn't gone away yet. Your 15 minutes continues. Go ahead.
I said, if there's another 15 minutes of fame, it's going to change our lives because people are going to say, wait a minute, isn't that the same guy who did this and the same guy who did that? And then they're looking into my background, they say, wow, this is amazing. And the next 15 minutes of fame was the separation of conjoined twins, and that's exactly what happened.
In 1987. So when you go to, by the way, it's Dr. Ben Carson. I really appreciate the time, Doc. Common Sense with drbencarson.com, Common Sense with bencarson.com, or go to @RealBenCarson over on X. Of course, he's the same Ben Carson that was the HUD secretary that we ran for president. I was actually a big fan. I've got to ask you about the conjoined twins, and without getting into everything you can get into, obviously, you've got two human beings that were to be separated completely as twins. Something happened where they ended up being attached at the head. Were they sharing a brain? Were there two distinctive, different brains in these individuals? When you look at it, how do you make the decision that I think I can separate them and I think they can survive?
Well, they share the vascular drainage systems.
Okay.
And that's the reason that they had such dismal results in previous attempts to separate them, because they would sanguinate. They would basically bleed to death. And we used hypothermic arrest because I was talking to the chief of cardiothoracic surgery at Hopkins, and he was telling me how they operate on the hearts of little babies.
Okay.
And how basically stop the heart, pump all the blood out of the body. They can operate up to an hour and then warm the blood up, pump it back in, start the hearts back up.
Holy mackerel.
And I was thinking, if we use that technique when we got to those critical vessels, maybe this could work and we could get those vessels separated and reconstructed in that hour and then pump the blood back in and start the heart back up. Then I said, why am I thinking about this? I'm never going to see a set of twins like that. They're so rare. 3 weeks later, there they were.
I just want to make sure that I understand. I'm a layperson. I'm not somebody who knows a lot about this, but you're literally saying empty all the blood out of their system so there's no blood when you do the separation. Make the new the drainage that you need to get the blood, circulating the correct way, where I guess one of them didn't have one because you ended up having one system to do the circulation. So they literally had no blood the entire time you operated?
That's correct.
Wow. How are they alive? I'm not that dumb. I mean, I would think you need blood.
Well, remember, their bodies have been cooled, so they're very, very cold, and you have cold saline running through their vessels. And then when you stop that, you warm them up, and that's how it works.
Unbelievable. Dr. Ben Carson did that in 1987. So going in, they knew the risks, you knew the risks, but on top of that, you decided to add a time limit on yourself. Was it literally, and I got to do this in an hour, or else we're not going to have a good result here?
Yeah, basically, when the cardiothoracic surgeons do that on infants, they know that they have an hour before you have irreversible damage.
Wow. So that, of course, is the next 15 minutes that you're still on. But I would think politically the 15 minutes started all over again. When you do that one, everybody on the planet now knows you. How does that change your life?
Well, people wanted to hear from me at that point.
Imagine.
How did you do that? And then they wanted to hear about the rest of my life. And, things really changed dramatically. And then I wrote the book because publishers kept saying, you need to write a book. I said, I don't want to write a book. After about the 10th publisher came, I said, okay, I'll write a book. And they said, this is really a good book. It'll probably sell 14,000 copies, which is really good for an autobiography.
Right.
It's over 2 million copies.
Of course it is, because you tend to be an overachiever, Ben Carson. I don't know if you noticed that, but you tend to be an overachiever. So you write the book, and by the way, it's still in publication, right? Can people still go and get it? What's the name of the book?
Gifted Hands. Gifted
Hands. So you can go get that still on Amazon and stuff, right?
Absolutely.
So go and get it. Let's make it 4 million after this podcast. So you write the book. As a reader of books, did you find it difficult to sit down and write a book, or did it flow out of you?
No. Well, the first book I wrote with a co-writer.
Okay.
The more recent books that I've done, I just dictate them, like I do an operative note. And then I have the system that transcribes my voice immediately. And it's much easier that way. And I can
Dr. Beck, I've never written a book. People keep saying I should write a book too, but I don't think anybody would be interested in my dumb life. But I would find it difficult, Ben. I would find it difficult to sit down and write words down that I know somebody else is taking in. If I'm consuming it, I know how I read. I know how I speak. You know how you read, how you speak. Do you have the audience in mind as you're writing it?
I'll tell you the secret.
Go ahead.
The secret is to list the things that you want to talk about.
Okay.
Like there's 30 things that you want to talk about, and then order them. And then it's very easy. You already know what you want to talk about, and you
See, I'm an oddball. I don't write anything down. Like in this interview, I have no questions for you written down. I just wanted to have a conversation with you, and that just seems to work better for me. But if I dictated, I didn't even think about just saying it. I speak for a living, so if I dictated it, maybe something like that can happen. I don't think I'd sell the 14,000 though. It's Dr. Ben Carson, Common Sense with drbencarson.com. I had Scott Turner on recently. Would you say that he was a protege of yours? Because you're certainly his mentor. And when he was on, first we started talking about football, and the guy lit up. And we just had a great conversation early on about that. And then I think he's doing a very good job continuing what you started with opportunity zones and so on at HUD. Tell me how you met Scott Turner, because I know that there's a very close relationship there.
Well, Scott is absolutely tremendous. He's going to be an outstanding Secretary of HUD. I met him. We were interviewing for an executive director for the White House Opportunity Zone and Rehabilitation Council. And we interviewed several people, myself and Jarrett. And Scott just really stood out. He was so enthusiastic and energetic. And we brought him on as the executive director. And he just did an incredible job. He was all over the country, informing people about opportunity zones, getting them involved. And I said, who better to be the Secretary of HUD than this guy, who already knows all the mechanisms, all the things that are necessary in order to revitalize an area.
Is Dr. Ben Carson. I agree with you, but let me ask you, let's go back to your childhood again. I'm jumping around a little bit because this is also intriguing to me. And once you say something, it fires something else in my brain, maybe some sort of a spark that a neurosurgeon could tell. But did the opportunity zones come from your mind? Was that your thought process, opportunity zones, because of what you faced growing up? I've been to parts of Detroit where you've got, it's disheveled. You've got poverty, as you said, which you hate, and I hate it as well. And people who live in those areas don't know, unless they read books like you did. You're very smart to read books. Thank God your mom made you do that, because you actually found out that other people live in different ways and better ways than you were living at the time. But people who live in neighborhoods like that don't get any opportunity. So was this born of your mind? Was this an aggregation of a bunch of people getting together and figuring out what can we do for communities that don't think they have opportunity when they really do?
Well, we were very focused on public-private partnerships and having the government not do everything, have the private sector. And Senator Tim Scott and one of the Democrat senators, I forget which one, kind of created the whole program and presented it to Trump. And he really liked it. And we sort of grabbed it from there and said, this is the perfect vehicle for the revitalization of depressed areas throughout the entire country.
I love the idea, and I wanted to throw this out there because I think that you'll have great knowledge of this. Where I live in Texas, we live in a suburb. You know, I work really hard, made a lot of money, made no money when I started out, probably like you. We all start from nothing, and then we build ourselves somewhere. Then we move to a nicer area, better school district, where we know there's lower crime. Instead of allowing that process to happen and fix where the crime is happening, what I'm seeing by, generally speaking, Democrat mayors and city halls and county commissioners and so on, is they're taking money from the federal government in some sort of, taxpayer-funded housing, and they're moving it into the nicer areas where there is lower crime and there is a better school system. Wouldn't it be better? I'm a little offended by that because I worked my way out of those areas like you did. And now I'm in a place where I know my property taxes are higher, my schools are better, and we're safer in general. I would like to see the central government in a private-public partnership fix the areas where the problems are, not send people away from those areas because we're not helping anything. In fact, we're actually probably taking a chance of taking people that grew up knowing about crime and how to do crime into an area that doesn't have it. It's a very clunky way to ask. Do you think Republicans and Democrats are doing it differently, whereas you and I as conservative Americans that love Judeo-Christian values want to fix the areas that aren't seeing opportunity, whereas the left in this country, the progressives in this country, want to make every area worse?
Well, the progressives basically want to have the government's finger in everything, controlling communities and neighborhoods and how they're supposed to be designed. You know, for hundreds of years, we were perfectly capable of doing that ourselves. In the early days of our country, look at how the communities thrived. In many cases, they couldn't even speak to each other because they were from different countries. They had different languages. But they understood one very important factor, that is the common good. What's good for everybody? You heard that phrase frequently from our founders.
Yes.
You know, let the neighborhoods develop for the common good of all the people who are around. Let them fashion their own neighborhoods. You don't have to stick your fingers into it. And that's the big problem in our country right now. Government has to be involved in everything, and they don't need to be. They just need to do certain things to make sure that, we have fairness. But their definition of fairness is them controlling everything, and that's not what fairness is.
Yes. When I was talking to Scott the other day, we talked about this at length. There are people in certain communities that don't think they have opportunity. That's why I love the name Opportunity Zone, because everybody in this country, by law, has an equal opportunity life ahead of them as long as they know how to do it. And I don't know that we've taught people in certain areas how to do it. And what I mean by that is, and I brought this up with Scott, and I wonder if you agree, and I'll use you as an example instead of Tiger Woods. I use Tiger Woods with him. When people see that Ben Carson from Detroit happens to be a black American, can succeed to the level of being the top neurosurgeon on the planet, maybe I can do that too. Doesn't matter that I'm Italian or Hispanic or black or Asian or whatever. Maybe that opportunity can happen for me because I see what Ben did and I want to be like him. I think we have to open up people's minds in areas that don't think they have opportunity and aren't reading books and don't know they can get out. We have to tell them that they can. That's why I like the private-public partnership, because now there's skin in the game from people who live in the areas. So Ben, is that a lot of what you want to do and what President Trump wants to do with the First Step Act and the opportunity zones? Listen, you've got equal opportunity by law in this country. You just might not know about it. We're going to educate you.
Well, getting people to understand what opportunities exist.
Yes.
Have you noticed a lot of times when foreigners come here, they do extremely well?
Extremely.
Because they open their eyes up and they say, you mean all I have to do is study? You mean all I have to do is work hard and I can have all of this? Whereas people who are born here say, I don't have any opportunities. Everybody's taking my opportunities. I'm a victim. If you think you're a victim, you are a victim. And it's really a matter of the mindset that you develop. And that was something that my mother gave to both my brother and myself. She was always saying, if anybody can do anything, you can do it too, except you can do it better. That was what she always said. And that kind of sunk in. And, I became the brain surgeon. He became the rocket scientist.
I love it. You don't have to be a brain surgeon or a rocket scientist to understand what Ben Carson's saying. Doc, I love what your mom did. I want to go back to the reading aspect quickly if we can. And you've got books out. You've got a whole list of things that children should go and read and learn. But the one thing that really jumped out that I didn't really talk to you about before today was that you knew that there was a better life because your mom made you read about it. And she wasn't making you read about it to say, we have nothing and they have everything. She made you read about it because she wanted you to understand there's a different worldview out there than in the corner of whatever in Detroit, Michigan. How do we get kids today to read? I think they're being dissuaded. I think they're being told not to read. I think they're being told, look at your phone all day and take whatever indoctrination somebody pops your way. How can we make them go back to the basics and read about explorers and read about history and read about what opportunities there are in this great land?
Well, that's one of the reasons that we created the Reading Room program.
Right.
We have 301 reading rooms in states across the country. And they're places that no little kid can pass up. They have very interesting books in them. They're decorated whimsically according to the area where they exist. Like there's one near Cape Canaveral that's in the shape of a space capsule.
Wow.
You look out one window, you see the Earth. You look out another one, you see the moon. You look out another one, you see E.T. floating in the air. And these things, they get points for the books they read. They can trade them in for prizes, which they're interested in the beginning. But after a while, they actually begin to enjoy reading. They actually begin to enjoy these books. And then their grades start going up. All kinds of things happen when the kid starts reading because you're looking at words all the time. So guess what? You learn how to spell. And you're putting those words together. So guess what? You learn grammar and syntax. And then you have to take those sentences and make them the concepts. So guess what? You learn to use your imagination. Those are the things that are important to creative people.
Yeah, it's amazing. I'm glad you mentioned the word imagination. As you were speaking, I was thinking there is a lack of imagination in the youth in this country right now because you don't have to imagine anything. It's all in your hand on a tablet or on a phone or on television or on YouTube or whatever. If you have to read the words, your mind now has to go and perform theater. You have to figure out what that would look like. Well, how high were the winds and why did the boat, move that way? What I do when you can't see me, it's theater of the mind. So people riding home from work are listening to a program and they have to figure out what does that guy look like? And boy, he really set the scene about what Ben Carson said and what he did when he was growing up. I love that aspect that you have to help somebody's mind go somewhere else. Do you agree that there's a lack of imagination with today's generation because of all the technology around us at all times?
A tremendous lack. Developmental psychologists tell us that 97% of little babies are creative. Have you ever noticed how they can take a little piece of paper and just have the fantastic time with it?
Yes.
And they said by the same token, by the time most children reach age 16, they're not creative. They're just sort of automatons at that point, looking at their social media, communicating with their friends, and really not thinking outside of any box.
Right.
It's one of the reasons that the Marxists are so anxious to get into our school systems early on. It was Karl Marx. No, it was Lenin. It
Right.
was Vladimir Lenin who said, give me your children to teach for 4 years, and the seed that I sow will never be uprooted. That's why they want to get in there and poison the minds of our children and send them off on the wrong pathway. Why would a little kid be sitting there wondering about whether they're a girl or a boy? That's ridiculous. And they have undeveloped brains. The brain doesn't fully develop until your mid-20s. Why would you be taking somebody with an undeveloped brain and poisoning them with thoughts of, are you a girl or a boy? That's the reason that God gave children parents to protect them during their vulnerable stages.
Yes.
And these people sneak around and do this without the knowledge of their parents. It really is child abuse.
What's interesting is, and this is what you may use this around your table as well, but when my kids, when they were growing up, would say, if they would have said, and they never said this because they were brought up right, "Hey, Dad, I think I'm a boy, and I've got 5 daughters, as you know." And my answer was, "You're not. Pass the potatoes." That's it. There was Ben. There was no more conversation. Well, why do you feel that way? Well, maybe you should go see a doctor about it. No, you're a girl. I have proof. Pass the potatoes. We have to get back to that. But I think a lack of that is because you've got so many people in high places like Hollywood. Let's use them for an example. I just saw yesterday 3, 4, 5 new Hollywood stars have trans kids. Ben, it's an epidemic in Hollywood. There must be something in the air. Must be something that they're drinking or eating. Or these people are living vicariously through their kids' pain and suffering to get attention. It's got to be the latter, right?
Kids are very suggestible and they're very curious. So if you plant those thoughts in them, they're going to germinate. And that's what we're seeing. 30% of Gen Zers identify on one of the letters of LGBTQ RSTUV.
It's RSTUV. I always say XYZ. I always add XYZ at the end of it. It's Dr. Ben Carson. Make sure you go check out commonsensewithdrbencarson.com. I want to ask you about this appointment to Trump's Commission on Religious Liberty. There is this lie in this land that you and I have talked about multiple times, that somehow there's a separation of church and state. There isn't. There's no separation of church and state in the Constitution. For anybody who wonders about our faith-based government institutions, just go and read the first Thanksgiving proclamation by George Washington, where he's talked about the Lord and him and his and God and over again, because it's always been intertwined. The first body that that handed out the Holy Bible was the House of Representatives. So there is no separation there. Somehow, the progressives, through the Obama years and most recently the Biden years, have convinced people that either government is God or God doesn't matter, or you can't mention God or Judeo-Christian values anywhere near an institution of government because that somehow violates the Constitution. I love that President Trump is doing a commission on religious liberty. What does that look like? What does that mean? As part of that commission, what are we bringing back to the fore that has been gone for a long time?
Well, it's going to be a matter of working with all the agencies to remove the anti-religious policies that exist. When I was at HUD, you couldn't give money to the homeless shelters that had a religious base. We changed that. We forget about the fact that before we had big government, it was the churches who took care of these people. And quite frankly, did a much better job of it. So we'll be doing things like that, trying to make sure that we don't have situations like the one that occurred in the South at an abortion clinic, where some pro-life people were standing outside, peacefully demonstrating, not blocking anybody's access, not messing with anybody, put in jail. It's ridiculous. And we just need to call people out on these things, make them very public, and call the appropriate authorities where they need to be controlled in an appropriate way, so that we really have true religious liberty and true freedom. Because remember, our founding document, the Declaration of Independence, says that our rights come from our Creator and not from government.
No, so Ben, I don't think it does. No, Joe Biden, when he said that line, didn't say the Creator part, so I don't think it's in there anymore.
Yeah, he completely deleted it.
Right. If you don't say it, it doesn't exist. Listen, everything you said is spot on. I love that you said they were peacefully protesting, because the Constitution does say you can rally, you can gather, you can protest. You have to do it peaceably. The word peaceable is actually in the Constitution, and people seem to forget that. So you can march down Main Street, USA. You can march down in the middle of Times Square in New York and be pro-Hamas and pro-Palestinian and block traffic and stop everybody else's freedom to move about, and nobody says anything. But you go and hold a sign in front of an abortion clinic and don't say a word, and you're going to get locked up. Ben, how did it get so upside down? Were we sleeping as the conservative wing in this party? Did we just think everybody can get along and didn't notice it happening? I just don't understand how this became mainstream.
Well, the left is very good at intimidation. But intimidation only works if you're afraid. You know, when I was a kid, I was deathly afraid of dogs, and it altered my life tremendously until a man told me, if you act like you're not afraid of the dog, they won't bother you. And I took that to heart, and it completely changed my life. By the same token, you know, God has not given us a spirit of fear. If you sit back and you just allow the other side to do anything they want and use the news media to make it seem like it's normal, you're going to lose. You have to challenge things. You know, you can't be the land of the free if you're not the home of the brave.
Absolutely right. Ben, where can people get the children's book series that you do?
They can go to AmericanCornerstone.org, and it shows the whole plethora of things. And you can also go to littlepatriotslearning.com.
I love it. I want everybody to go in and make sure their kids read these stories. Go ahead.
And you can also, if you really want to be entertained with your little ones, go to YouTube and just type in Star Spangled Adventures. And there's 32 of them there, little vignettes of cartoons of important aspects of our history, and they're done very well. All little kids, after they see one, they say, "Can I see another one?"
I love it. Well, I've got a 10-year-old in the house, so we'll make sure that she starts watching that. It's Dr. Ben Carson. One last question, Ben. I love what HHS is doing. I think Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is on the right track. Get rid of all the preservatives. Get rid of all the food dyes and food colorings. I literally, in my house, we've stopped eating anything or drinking anything that has all these preservatives. And suddenly, you know, the bloat is gone. And we're more vascular now. We feel healthier. The stomach bloat is gone. I mean, we have been fed some pretty messed up food for a long time. And for some reason, the FDA and CDC and NIH and all these organizations, they just allowed it to happen. The regulations might be there, but they weren't enforcing anything. What do you think of the job RFK Jr. is doing, and are we on the path to a healthier America?
I am so pleased to see what he's doing, what Marty McCary at FDA is doing, what Bhattacharya is doing at NIH. I think they're going to bring faith in our health system back once again. They're working hard to do that. I'm extremely pleased about it. And, you know, you look at our children, a third of our children have some type of chronic illness going on. And 40% of them are overweight. We've got so many problems that are self-induced. You look at what's happening with autism spectrum disease. You know, it was 1 to 4 in 10,000 a few decades ago, and now it's 1 in 31. That's a major issue. And Bobby Kennedy just says, let's find out what's behind it. And some people are opposed to that. If you've got something going on that's destroying your environment, it's destroying your longevity, wouldn't you want to know what it is?
Absolutely. But Ben, is there a reason why the government wants us fat and stupid? And I mean that in the nicest possible way. I mean, if you just eat this stuff, the processed garbage that's at the grocery store in almost every aisle, you're going to be fat and stupid. So why would they want us to be that way? Or is this big food that used to be big cigarette, big tobacco, by the way? They bought a bunch of food companies. Is it big food wanting to keep us addicted to their stuff?
It's all about the money. Follow the money. And it's very corrupting. The love of money is the root of all evil.
It's Dr. Ben Carson. Go right now. Common Sense with drbencarson.com. Common Sense with drbencarson.com. Go to @RealBenCarson over on X. I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on the new show. Thank you so much for the extended time today. I love hearing about your history. And I hope that people watching and listening will be inspired to make sure their kids understand there's something more than the four walls. There's something more than the device they've got in their hand. And they can actually explore through writing, explore through the YouTube videos that you talked about, and they can see a better future. Ben, thanks a million.
Thank you, Joe. Keep up the great work. We love you.
Thank you so much. I love you back. Thank you. The next episode of Unshaken and Unafraid will be coming your way soon. We really appreciate the doctor coming on. Have a great one. We'll see you soon.